You probably already train Jiu Jitsu. You probably want to get better, faster. Before we get into the specifics of tactics and techniques for grappling, we need to understand how people learn in general, and specific to that, how people learn motor patterns and develop motor skills. Oftentimes, you'll hear grappling referred to as physical chess, and this is a decent metaphor in the beginning, as you're oftentimes only focused on the opening sequence or a single capture at a time, much like a linear shot in pool. Eventually, our skills become extremely diverse, and we consider variables that are incomprehensible to the novice. At the expert level, we're starting with the end game in mind. Another way to think of this is like learning a language. Simply accumulating or amassing vocabulary isn't the same as having a conversation with someone. So that's the first point that I want to make, that we should stop thinking of learning jiu-jitsu and learning grappling like accumulating vocabulary, like learning techniques only in isolation. Continuing with the language metaphor, one way that people build that initial vocabulary is with flashcards. And what happens with flashcards is that people oftentimes unconsciously anticipate or even consciously try to memorize the order or the sequence of the flashcards. And what happens then is you're learning the order of the cards rather than what the cards really mean or what the words really mean. So to truly test your recall, you need to shuffle the cards between each attempt at recalling the information. This brings us to the research on block versus randomized training. Most of us have probably done a lot of block training, and that is reps on reps on reps on reps. And what the research shows is that that is a decent method for initially accumulating information. However, it's a rather poor method of applying information or skills after they've initially been learned. So the second point here is that repetition alone has a very limited range of application. We do need repetition, but we also need a diverse environment to learn to apply our skills in. Lastly, we need stress. We need some sort of resistance to push back against in order to build our confidence and our competence in the skill that we're trying to learn. We commonly get this wrong in both directions, where we drill too light with our partner kind of dead fishing around like more of a grappling dummy. And when it comes to applying skills, we're way too hard and way too many variables introduced at once with open live sparring. We even see this in positional training or specific sparring, where we limit the range of positions that you can move into. It's still the same overwhelming stress. And what happens is somebody isn't able to apply the skills that they just learned drilling because the stress has gone up too fast in the application or the sparring portion of the training session. And their brain shuts down to a fight or flight mode, which is not conducive to learning. So what we need is a progressively tiered application of the resistance that we're working against. We need the resistance, but we also need it to be proportionate to our level of mastery or competence in the thing that we're trying to learn. So we need enough stress or stimulation that we can think critically and we start to input and consider different variables, but not so much that it overwhelms us and forces us into that fight or flight mode, stops us from learning. So to wrap things up, we do need repetition in order to accumulate knowledge. However, we need to understand that accumulation has a very limited range of application if we do not introduce random variables shortly after accumulating the knowledge. So we need diversity and randomness in the environments and situations that we apply that information in. Also need resistance. We need some stress to push against to develop our skills and to grow stronger in our ability to apply those skills in those various environments we mentioned. Lastly, the intensity of the stress that we're working against needs to follow a progressive overload, or it needs to have a tiered approach so that we can have time to grow and think critically about the environment that we're working in and the stress that we're working against. Please like, share, and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you want to see more theoretically based or conceptually driven models of learning like this, particularly as it pertains to jiu-jitsu. I think it's something that's really lacking in the community, and there's still, even in 2023, a lot of reliance on only accumulating more skills and learning more techniques like a vocabulary test, and that's not an efficient way to learn.